Alright guys, let's continue on with my Jaws franchise reviews and talk about Jaws 2, the 1978 sequel to Jaws. The one that people say is the most creditable and best sequel out of the bunch, because honestly, I Jaws 2, for me, like, honestly, I'm not saying this is a worse movie in terms of like filmmaking, but I'd rather watch Jaws 3 and Jaws 4 than Jaws 2. For the most part, I'd take the climax of Jaws 2, but the rest of Jaws 2, I'm just like, there's nothing really that's interesting about it. I think that Jaws 2 overall is just kind of boring, except for the ending is actually pretty solid and pretty good.
Hey Corey, thank you for letting me be in your video for Jaws 2. I like this movie quite a bit. It's not near as good as the first movie, but it still has a lot of cool scenes, I guess. The shark still looks pretty good. Everything, definitely a lot better than what we see in the next movie, but, and everything. I think the cast is pretty decent, although you could tell kind of that Roy Schneider wasn't all in on this movie. I never really noticed it until the last time I watched it, but then when I watched it again just a little bit ago, I noticed it even more how you could kind of tell that he didn't want to be in this movie and everything. I don't know if it's just me but it seemed like his line delivery and stuff, it just like he had the I don't want to be here feeling to it and everything. But I love how this movie feels like a slasher with a shark and everything, and the third act is pretty good and everything, although there was one character in particular, I don't know what her name is, but she's screaming and getting hysterical and stuff, and she is like, I really wish the shark would eat this girl and everything. But also, I don't think that John Williams' score for this movie was as good as the first one either, but I thought it was alright, but it's actually one of my least favorite scores of his and everything. To me, it just kind of feels forgettable and everything. But besides that, I think this is an okay sequel. It's not one of my very most favorites, but I don't hate it either and everything. I could have lived without having any of the Jaws sequels and everything, but I don't hate this movie. I think it was alright. It's a decent sequel to Jaws. Of course, any movie following Jaws was going to have a hard time being near as good, but I think they did the best they could with it and everything. I think the directing was pretty good too, and everything. But anyway, thank you for letting me be in this video, Corey, and I'll have my full review up for this movie, so if y'all want to check it out. And I think you're going to be in my video too, Corey, so hopefully, so y'all can check that out when I get it uploaded. I'm going to try to upload it close to the same time as you and everything. So thank you, and have a good day, everybody.
But let's get started on this. This is one of the first big sequels that came out when sequels were not a thing. Sequels did not exist, really. There were a few. There were some sequels, like, not really in horror, and typically not in like movies like this. Like, I know there are movies like there were like Clint Eastwood movies that had sequels. Just on top of my head, I'm thinking of an example that before 1978, but there weren't really any horror sequels at all. Really, I mean, besides like maybe the Christopher Lee Dracula movies, like something like that along those lines, but it wasn't to where they became profitable in terms of sequels. So I think that this one is one of the first big sequels that really did probably make a mark at the box office. I don't know on top of my head what they made with this movie, but I feel like this movie probably was pretty successful because they made two other Jaws movies after this. So yeah, the basic story of this is the first movie again. It's Chief Brody and his wife and his kids again, and then there's a shark again. The shark just appears, and it's a second shark after the first one's killed. I do like the fact, though, at first with this movie, even though it's just kind of boring throughout the first like hour, I think that it's interesting that they're like, in the first movie, the mayor and everybody else was kind of in denial about the shark. Even whenever he figured out, he was still in denial about the shark, the mayor. But in this one, I like the fact that the shark, whenever he's killed in the first couple kills in this movie, there's no way to indicate that it's truly a shark because there's a death where a person gets killed by a shark, but in a boat that explodes. So then they just think that the boat exploded. And I do like that. I think that's a clever idea just to kind of change up this sequel, but not enough to make this sequel really very interesting. But I do like that idea. I think that's a cool idea. And it is an extremely silly moment, though, with that explosion scene because the shark's attacking the girl accidentally douses herself with gasoline, and then gasoline gets poured all over the boat, and the boat explodes. And it is silly. Like, it is ridiculous with this with this performance of this character in that moment. So it cracks me up with that scene. But besides that, the beginning is okay, but throughout the middle, there is honestly nothing that I can really say. Like, it just kind of follows the beats of the first one again in a way where it's not very interesting or entertaining. So there's really not much for me to say about like the middle half of it. And I was kind of stretching talking about the beginning. Besides like the explosion thing, there's not much else I can really say about it either. Because this time we focus on this group of teenagers, which makes this a slasher technically, but it's not as fun as a slasher, though. It's not a very interesting slasher for me. But it focuses on all these teenager characters, which aren't very interesting. They aren't as good as all the characters in the last movie. Even with Brody and his wife and the kids back, they're not as interesting because it just doesn't feel like it's the same type of directing. Like, I mean, this is a solid movie. Like, it's got solid things about it, but it's just not the original Jaws. And because it's just kind of played so straight like the original, but without Spielberg doing this, it feels like it's just not very interesting or very fun. Like, it's just it's a sequel. And that's why I'd argue whenever I review Jaws 3 and 4, I would rather watch those than these, because those are at least incredibly bad and incredibly horrible, but so fun in how horrible they are. So really, the middle part of this movie in the beginning is just really not very interesting to me. The climax, though, like I said, is good. Like, I like the fact that it is these teenager characters in these boats, and the shark is literally trailing and circling around them. I think that actually works. I think they knew what to do with the climax. They really did. They really tried to make it a little different, and I did like that. They can't escape from this boat. Like, they're in the middle of in the ocean, and like they can't go anywhere. I think that's really great. And I really love that the shark gets fried. That's awesome. I thought that was a cool way of killing off the shark in this one, as opposed to being the same as the last one. I think that works. And I just thought that was hilarious that I read online and they were debating on in Jaws 3D bringing back the charred shark like he was still alive, which is fucking ridiculous. But I like the fact that in this one, it is final. Like, the shark is dead, but they were going to bring it back in Jaws 3. But no, they just brought back a new shark. Like in every movie, they bring a new shark every single movie, and they kill off the shark in every single movie. So it would have been even worse if they brought back, or maybe not. Jaws 3D is so hilariously bad. Maybe it would have been even more funny if they brought back the shark that was electrocuted and fried and brought it back. That would have been awesome in terms of how funny bad Jaws 3 is. So maybe that might have been a good thing for me personally, but yeah, besides that, I really don't have much to say about this one. Jaws 2 is just kind of forgettable, besides the climax, which is solid. The other two movies after this are so horrible, but they are so interesting and fun to watch because they're so bad. Honestly, I feel like they put more effort into making those bad than making this interesting, if that makes sense. I'm not saying that they're better movies, they're not, but this one is just kind of a boring sequel. So that's all I can say about Jaws 2. It's kind of a boring sequel. So that is my thoughts on Jaws 2, and thank you guys so much for watching.